right. Welcome everybody to the Policy and Finance Committee meeting on August 15th, 2024. I will call this meeting to order. First up is the approval of the minutes from our June 11th meeting. I looked over them and didn't see anything that I thought needed corrected, but that does not mean that I didn't miss something.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, we'll move on to the next thing, which is an update on the ARPA funds, which I'm assuming is Josh. I don't think we have too much, but I do have a request today, which I've already talked to Josh about.
Good afternoon, everybody. So the ARPA update, there's really no changes from last time. For this quarter, all the organizations submitted their compliance reports on time, so we're all squared away there. The only two groups still waiting to draw down money are Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas. There's no worries there. April's been in contact with them, and they're planning to draw out the rest of the money before the end of the year. But then there's still the Oasis group, who there is some concern on staff's end about getting an open purchase order before 12/30/2024, which is when the deadline to get an open purchase order is, to eventually hopefully be spent by the end of 2026. So that's really the only update on our end, and we'll kind of go from there.
So I just had two things. The first is, as it relates to the Oasis group, my plan, just so everyone knows, is I'm going to reach out to them, have a conversation to see kind of where they are, what information they can give me as to what I know they're trying to work on a lot of things at once, but I know time is crunching on them. And then after that, when we meet in October, we will have a discussion and see what information we have, and if we have to make some decisions, and make sure they're here to be a part of that, and kind of figure out what we got to do with those funds.
Yeah, as long as they're here, I'm in October, because I'd like to know why.
Yeah. I'll talk to them first and tell them they need to be here in October, and,
Thank you.
And we'll be able to have that conversation. The second thing is, and I mentioned this to Josh earlier, I would like us to take a look, and it can be random. Josh mentioned maybe just doing like taking random from the top 20 projects. I think we had 40 altogether. I would like us to do like 5 to 7 random check-in audits. I just want to make sure that these funds, even though we've gotten their reports and they've all looked good and they've now got the money, just kind of a random check on some of these groups to make sure that they actually did what they were supposed to, right? For instance, I know someone from Positive Connections is here, and we gave them money to put together a testing trailer, and it's built and it's on the street. And she said on October 9th, there's even going to be sort of a ribbon cutting, unveiling, open house thing for it. So we know they're good. You don't need to audit Positive Connections. We can see that on the street. And I'm pretty confident, based on the reports we've gotten, that there won't be any issues. But I think as we wrap up this process after several years, it's good to just have that check. So there's some confidence in everybody that we did our due diligence and made sure the money actually got where we intended it to get. So however you want to come up with that process is great. Councilman Miller?
Thank you. Is there anything in those contracts that limit like how often or when, or any limitations to what he's asking for, which I am in support of, but like, is there anything in our language that prohibits, like from a certain time period or anything at all, any limitations to random audits?
I would have to pull the contracts. I don't have them in front of me, but I'm happy to check that out.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'm not looking for us to go through all their books. I think on some of them, if they said we were going to like build a trailer, or we were going to buy kitchen equipment for individuals who live in these, homes, like, just know you bought the equipment. I mean, so I'm not looking for us to open up all their books. And I know that's not what you meant, but right. Just so the groups who are listening know, this is not meant to be that wholesale of a check. But and if you are listening and you haven't done that yet, here's your notice. We could come knocking very soon. Go buy that kitchen equipment or whatever it was tomorrow, this weekend. So those were really my only two things as it related to ARPA. Any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Anything from staff want to add? Awesome. Thank you very much, Josh. All right. Land Bank Ordinance. Is that Rhiannon? Planning Director.
Thank you. So I figured we could probably tag team this together, Councilman Duncan, if you want to, but essentially what we're looking to do is to make an amendment to the current ordinance that would allow us to strike the language that basically excludes us from being able to transfer property utilized as rental instead of just for home ownership. I think in the discussions we've had and what we've been finding is the properties we're taking into the land bank and some of the interested parties are likely folks that would like to maybe build some type of affordable housing or developers that want to do some infill projects. I think that what we've kind of seen from the market is trying to build something and get your return out of selling it. The profit margins are tight. So the idea of being able to perhaps create a rental property, and then also the idea of if we can get the right piece of land and somebody could come forward and build some type of apartments in one of our multifamily zoned areas, that would be great, but it would be pretty common for our market to not see those condoed out and sold. They would likely need to be rentals. So that kind of, the way the language reads today prohibits that.
Yeah, so just a little history. When we passed the original land bank ordinance, our goal was to be very narrow and specific because we really want to make sure the program understood its focus and stuck to it. And so far, now that that group is up and running and has acquired properties, it's done that. What we have found is some of the properties that we have looked at, including vacant lots, for instance, there's now a vacant lot in the land bank program, could have a few homes put on it, but it's also ideal for a multifamily, multi-unit development, which is not going to be ownership. It's going to be some kind of apartment complex or condo complex that would be put there. But under the way that it was originally written, we excluded rentals. Part of that concern, which was totally valid, and we've seen in the last couple of weeks with some issues, is we don't want to develop a land bank program that essentially then hands these properties over to the worst of the worst in our community, who are landlords. The good news is those backstops are in place with the land bank program under the ordinance and the rules already passed by the council.
Okay.
That land bank program has the authority to say no to whoever they want. You cannot have any open tax issues, any open violation issues with code compliance to even qualify for these land bank programs. And so that group is going to know if someone comes to us and says, I want to develop this here and it's going to be owned by so-and-so, that land bank group would say, no, we can't. We're not letting that person own this. Bring us somebody better, or vice versa. Thank you. And I will also note that anyone who, under the current land bank ordinances, has to own it for a minimum of 5 years.
Okay.
So they can't turn around, build it, tell us that they're going to do it, and then flip it in 6 months and trick us. If they're really committed to it, they are committed to it. So we believe those backstops are in place, and now that we've had the board together and been able to look at properties and had conversations, the board voted on this also unanimously and said, yes, please, can we go back to the council and give us some authority to allow landlords and those companies to have some properties if we think it's appropriate. So there's the genesis of this and why we've brought it in front of you today. Questions, comments, concerns?
I do, just for the, those denials.
Is your mic on?
Yeah,
No,
it should
it
be
is.
on, yeah. For the denials, is there a clear and laid out merit system of why they would be denied?
Yeah, there's a criteria that's both in the goals of the land bank program, which are used directly when people apply, and then there's a criteria of requirements you must meet or not meet, I guess,
Right.
That we would specifically cite
Okay.
to tell people so it's not just, we don't like you. No, you have violations open, or you have a history of this, or you currently have 3 properties that are in court. No. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I know we would, but I just want to make sure on the record.
No, never assume, man.
Yeah.
Never assume.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I again, I know this isn't built into this, and there's no way to bake it into that. All I can do is the old trust us, system. But I will tell you, in a lot of ways, right now, the biggest reason is for the multifamily developments. That doesn't mean there won't be some infill housing that could fall under this. And there's already an exception in the current ordinance for nonprofit organizations. So right now, regardless of whether we pass this, whether it's Habitat or Cornerstone or those kind of groups could already qualify for these properties, even though they're rental sort of establishments. But there's already a nonprofit exception. So this definitely would be for the for-profit industry. And we want to be very clear about that. But we think it's necessary and will actually really help us move some properties along.
Okay.
Councilman Banks.
How many properties are currently in the land bank?
Well, right now there's just 5, and they're all vacant lots that the city owned. We've moved them into the land bank. We're looking at a 6th, which is kind of a lot. And then staff is evaluating some upcoming homes that may or may not be on any kind of tax sale that's coming up in the next 30 to 60 days, and whether or not we think any of those are worth, and those are actually current homes. So we're hoping we'll expand it to 10 or 12, and then hopefully start churning them over.
Thank you,
Get them out
Mr.
of the
Chair.
land bank. That's the goal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
Good.
All right. Anything else from staff?
No?
All right. Well, then if we're good with this, the goal would be to move it out and get it on an upcoming council agenda. So I guess I would move to approve.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Randy. All right, now the really fun stuff, our legislative agenda. Good news is we're not trying to write the legislative agenda today. What we're trying to do is kind of get some general consensus on some areas of topics you'd like included that I know Amanda and myself would like included for consideration. And then when we meet again, we're probably going to need to meet in September at some point, review the actual language with the goal of having it in front of the council perhaps in October. A couple years ago, we very much made a conscious effort to not wait until the session started in January to get this thing approved by the council, because then that doesn't give our lobbyist or our legal team a chance to actually talk to legislators and start putting it in front of them until it's kind of too late. So we've tried to move this up. So first thing, very quickly, you currently have in your packet the 2024 agenda. And I'm going to go through that really quickly, and then I have a few things I would like to get some feedback on whether people are okay with us putting some language together. And then I know Amanda has a few things, and if between us we've forgotten something. And then anything you folks would like to add.
Where is it under? All I have.
Oh, that was under
This
number
is-
5. It's as an ordinance because we passed it as a resolution. Sorry, as a resolution. If you start under finance and taxation, we can remove the LAVTR piece. The state legislature got rid of LAVTR when they passed the new tax plan. So LAVTR doesn't exist, so there's no reason for us to advocate for it anymore. So we will probably remove that. The business competition piece will come back. That's relating to government competition and legislation that would imply that if the city is running something that a private business thinks is in competition with it, they wouldn't have to pay taxes. We have lots of serious concerns with that, especially the categories they've chosen over the years, which includes childcare and fitness facilities. So suggest we leave that in. Same with sales tax and unfunded mandates. Those are fairly broad, but we'll probably just leave those in. And I don't see any changes we need to make otherwise. None of those things have happened, so I don't know that we can leave those in. I do think we can probably take out the Mendinger property piece. It has a new ownership, and I have no idea what its future plans are for that. So until we know that, I'm not comfortable keeping it in there. Outside of that, everything else hasn't really moved the needle on anymore, so I think it gets to stay. Is there concurrence over there?
I mean, before we take out the Miniger property.
We can find out, yeah.
I'm about to say.
We can find out. But yeah, I know it's now, it's gone from nonprofit hands to, I believe, a for-profit hand, so that may be part of it, but we need to verify that.
The only other change to those is on the minimum wage. We just need to update it to take out the reference to the old Senate bill, probably.
Yep. Yeah. And the minimum wage piece was one that was adopted last year. Originally, Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala had requested that addition. There was no objection.
Okay.
So those are the things that kind of the changes to the current one that we'll make and leave those in. I have a couple related to taxes I would like us to consider, and again, we'll write the language. I just want to run this by everybody to see. 2 of them are relating to property taxes, and one of these, well, both of these actually come from both because I think it's good for us as a city, but also my day job with the League of Municipalities, things that the league will be advocating for to some degree. The first is, I think there's some acknowledgement that the state of Kansas needs to reevaluate its property tax valuation system. That's not really a controversial statement, even with the people who support the system up at the State House know changes need to be made. There's a lot of different options to that. I'm not advocating we suggest the specific change, although one of the things, for example, they're looking at is in the ag industry, valuations are based on a rolling average versus the year to year like we do on commercial, on residential. That's a change they're looking at. Maybe we need to go to a rolling average for residential that would probably be a positive change, right? But so there are changes that need to be made, and I think we as a capital city need to recognize that and push our state legislators to, from my, as I've said it before, my frustration, blaming us all the time for the problem and kind of take a look inward and address issues that, truthfully, the valuation system's out of our control as a city, but it certainly impacts our property taxing ability. The second thing is a little more of a, it sounds snarky, and maybe it is, but it's something that we've talked about with a lot of other cities across the state. It's fine that the revenue neutral process is here and that it exists. There's a growing frustration at how a number of state legislators view how we should be following the revenue neutral process, yet they themselves do not have to follow the revenue neutral process. They don't take a vote on the floor of the House or Senate that says we will exceed or not exceed revenue neutral, yet they've made the same expectation of us. So the tenet would be to add something along the lines of, hey, what's good for us should be good for you, and you need to follow the same rules you make us follow as it relates to the property taxing laws. So those would be my two, and like I said, I don't have the language yet, but those would be two things I will probably float by you when we meet next time. And then the last one as it relates to sales tax. One of the tenets of frustration over the last couple of years is the state legislature continues to exempt everybody and their brother. You know, if you're a group and you want a sales tax exemption, they don't want to say no because who wants to say no to paying sales tax, right? The problem with that is every time they do it at the state level, it impacts the local sales tax too. And the difference is, while the state can change their sales tax rate with a vote on the floor, we cannot. Ours is, every sales tax we have in place for the most part is voter approved. And it's often targeted for specific purposes in some cases, maybe not as much in Topeka, but in a lot of other communities for something they built or parks. And our request at the league has been, and I would like to include it in our, because we're the capital city, is that the legislature can do whatever they want with their portion of sales tax when they make exemptions. That's their job. That's what they're elected to do. That's not my role to tell them how to manage that money. That's why they're there. But stop messing with our sales tax collection. And at some point, give us some authority to make those decisions locally, which we also do not have. So we can't make, not to raise it, but we can't roll back any sales tax either, even if we wanted to. So that piece we'll see if we add it. But the first piece I think is important to sort of work with them to deal with their money and stop messing with our money because it's eroding our tax base. As we have conversations about how we're going to manage our property taxes and how we're going to make this city livable for folks, that's a big piece of it as they continue to do that. So those are my pieces as it relates to taxes that I will probably add some language for and include in whatever we bring to you. But I want to give you a heads up that it's not that too far out of bounds. It's something a lot of cities are struggling with as they deal with the legislature.
Okay.
Amanda?
Sure. You want me to go over some of the things that have come up from staff, or how would you like?
Whatever. We had that list. Just start
Okay.
going down it.
Okay,
We'll
so
see where
every year I send multiple emails to staff, governing bodies saying, hey, if there's things out there that you want them to consider, now's your time. Doesn't mean they're fully vetted, doesn't mean you'll ultimately decide on them, but we try to bring them to you so that you can start considering them and say, heck no, don't spend time researching that, or that's intriguing. Spend more time researching that so that you can decide whether or not you want to continue to pursue it. So some of the options that have come forward, there's been a request the last 2 years to modify the Open Records Act a bit to allow helmet cams to not be open records. So that way if the fire department ever decided to have helmet cams, you can think about how problematic some of those situations are. They're going to health calls, medical calls, into the private residences. The amount of just sheer privacy data about your citizens a helmet cam would have is pretty extensive, so it would require a lot of time to redact out the public portions versus the private portions. So if they were exempt from the Open Records Act, that would allow them to be used for training purposes so that you could learn from them how to better approach fires, and you could use them for the tools that they're designed for without trying to add another attorney to your staff just to redact all the privacy data out that we would be required to redact. So that has come up the last 2 years. I know the fire marshal had a bill last year that prohibited body cams in some facilities because of those kind of purposes. So this would be a different way to get around some of those medical issues that you wouldn't want disclosed.
Just to clarify, this only would apply to the fire.
Correct.
This has nothing to do with policing or police department, they wouldn't,
Correct.
it wouldn't apply to them at all.
Correct. This is just helmet cams for firefighters. And so it's a unique issue because of the medical calls and some of the other things that firefighters go to. They're also not criminal investigation records generally, which is what polices fall under. We already have a very robust system for police body cams. We know how to handle those. Those are appropriately handled under the law. But helmet cams are just this new territory of things that fire departments are expanding out into.
And I guess one more clarification. This wouldn't exempt them from legal lawsuit. I mean, it would exempt them from the open records, but if someone sues, judges will still get access
yes,
to that.
yes.
Yeah, it seems
Yes,
like a
they
small clarification, but it's a big one.
It is a big one. And once the footage is there, the footage is there. One of the questions that a citizen called in asking that this committee consider it is a request to privatize the ticketing of traffic tickets of individuals. He would like us to move that from a law enforcement function to a private business function. I did explain to him that that would take a state law change, but said that I would bring it to this committee. His thought is that red light tickets, those kind of things, if they were enforced by a private business, that you would be more likely to get tickets and it would cut down on traffic accidents. It's a law enforcement function in the state of Kansas, but I promised that I would bring it forward to you guys.
Yeah, right, nope.
Then we have also had discussions about what it would look like to change the age for police officers to 18 to increase our force. You can join the military at 18, but you cannot join a police force until you are 21. So there is a gap period there where you lose people that were interested in high school until they get to their 21. We have been doing research about what other states around us do. There are several states that have moved to 18, so if that's an area that you have more interest in, we are happy to continue to explore that and talk to law enforcement about that. And then finally, the last idea is it has been very much a struggle to find employees in certain categories of local government. It's a struggle to find attorneys that want to go into local government, engineers. We've had to do a lot of immigration work because you do not have a lot of people in the United States that want to be engineers right now. It's a very competitive field. And those are just the two that come to the top of my mind. So we would be very interested in a legislative program that creates grant access or funding that cities could apply for to help incentivize people either to go into these hard to fill local government fields or incentivizes them to stay in Kansas. Doctors have several programs like this where they will pay back a portion of their loans. Other professions do. There are very limited ones. So our thought is maybe something that is targeted specifically at local government and those hard to fill categories, and started out as a request for grant money or some kind of federal or state level taxes, something to help incentivize people to go into local government. We don't know what that looks like yet, but there is definitely a growing need and a massive shift of people that are retiring out that have been working in local government, and you have a huge gap of nobody going into the field, and so we're going to need employees at some point. So that would be our last request that has risen. And then finally, the deputy mayor is very interested in exploring some more language related to contracts for deeds. Apparently, there was a bill that passed last year on contracts for deeds that apparently has made the case law eliminated on equitable interest in contracts for deeds, and has actually caused quite a few problems for individuals that are stuck in that situation, in a bad situation. So she is interested in exploring what kind of language could be added to our agenda to help those situations. Most of that is handled through the county with the Register of Deeds rather than the city, as well as whether or not there's language that we could add to strengthen penalties under the Landlord-Tenant Act for bad landlords.
All right, so a couple things. Obviously, remember, we're not approving anything today. I think it's really what we're just open to seeing language on and then deciding if we're good with the language. I can tell you, don't really think we need to waste much time on privatizing traffic tickets, but if I'm wrong,
I would like
let
to
me
not
know
waste time.
now.
Please do not waste time.
That seems like I'm okay with, I mean, this is me personally, I'll give you guys a chance. I'm okay with seeing language on helmet cams and the incentive for employees, the contract for deeds. I guess I'm open to seeing the language on police officers to 18. I have some personal concerns with that, and I will tell you, I had a brief conversation today with the individual who represents the state unions, and they are not a fan. It's the short version of that long conversation. But if you want to see language, we can see it, so I'll leave that. But so those are just my initial thoughts. Any thoughts, Councilman Miller?
It's a no-go on the age requirement. I've been around teenagers for too long. 18, 19, going into military at that level. I've never been in the military, never served, so I may be stepping out of line saying this, but I imagine the majority of them in that age group go into non-leadership positions that require you to make a quick decision that's not being told to you from someone else. So at 18, 19, I don't believe it's prudent to have that capacity as a local officer. So I would say nay on that. And also I guess I'd like to see the language on the helmet cams. To me, I feel like all cams should be able to be recorded if possible, as needed to be redacted. But I'm open to reading the language. I think that's the only two I had any issue with.
Member Hofer, thoughts or comments?
I'm not opposed if they would look at lowering the age to 20, but 18 is kind of iffy in my mind. And some that age mature faster than others, and I'm assuming that we would have the ability to discern that from their interviews to be able to go into the academy. So if lowering it a year would help with the pool, I'm not opposed to that at all. Because our pool is not always, it's more of a puddle sometimes. So the helmet cams, I can understand why they want to, I'm thinking in terms of somebody who's having a medical emergency and they do not want everything about that out. Yeah, I agree with Marcus. Those are really the only two I have questions about. David, how do you?
Any thoughts, Councilmember Banks, since you're here?
I think 18, if we're sending people into the service, and I think it would be the same thing for PD. I know on fire, it's been a long time since we've had an 18-year-old be on the fire department or at the entry level, but I don't see why they couldn't be considered. I mean, some 18, 19-year-olds, 17-year-olds make good decisions. And it's the only thing I would see in the language would be how we consider those for, depending on their age. And like Councilwoman Hofer said, during the interview process, we find out a lot about a person's cognitive skills and ability to make decisions, those things. Thank you.
I think that gives staff some directions to see what they can bring back to us. Did we miss anything, City Manager? Anything from you folks that you would like us to consider after we remove?
Thank you, Chair. So just a couple of things. One, along the lines of the ticketing, I know that we had tossed around red light cameras. I don't believe that we are allowed to
We are
put those
not.
out.
There's a state law against
Right,
it.
and so something for consideration. I know that there are companies that have actual certified peace officers that review those tickets before they're actually sent out to the public. So just something else to think about. Along the lines of the 18-year-old police or firefighter, I do know that there are some departments that do, or I know one state in particular that recently changed its limit to, or its minimum age to 18. But there could be policies put in place by department that maybe they start at 19 and a half, and they just have to be 20 years old by the time they get their certification. And I think along the lines of the fire department, I think that is the academy, is it 18 months? Is it?
Yes.
So I mean, if they start at 18, I mean, they probably won't start on their birthday, but I mean, by the time they finish the academy, they could be close to 20, 21 years old. And so I would just ask for you to consider that in your decision making. The other thing that I've talked with the team about is the idea of for our rental properties, some kind of program that would allow for required inspections, if you will. I know right now, I think the law allows for voluntary inspections of rental properties, but I think that you're all aware of some of the challenges that we've been having with some of our rental properties in the community. And so I don't know if that's something that you would like for us to consider as well, putting together a program or putting together an agenda item to consider that as well.
Lawrence has a program that does something.
So Lawrence was actually the city that started a required inspection program that led to the preemption of mandatory inspection programs. We can do voluntary inspections. I'm exploring. I think there are ways to tie habitability potentially to inspections. So if there's any, not loopholes in the law, but ways to accomplish what we want with the current law, it would be nice if they would repeal the preemption, because especially if a facility is receiving city funds or HUD funds or federal funds, it seems a little insane that even that's preempted from requiring under our state law. So even finding ways to carve out some of these things rather than a straight preemption.
That seems like a more realistic carve out to that preemption than just trying to repeal it. And it's not the full thing, but I mean, I know that, does that apply to any money? So we can't right now say, I'll use a low level, you qualified for, we redid the bathroom under our program where we'll help you remodel the bathroom so you can do a, easy in, easy out shower, right? We can't now say, once you've qualified for that, fine, but for the next 2 years, it's a rent, since it's a rental, we get to come inspect you.
I think that's where the law has some gray area that I want to explore a little more, because we don't have to give money to people, so we should be able to try contractual rights to that. Right now, it's written very much as a voluntary is the only way you can do it, with the voluntary consent of the tenant. And so I think that's a gray area that there might be some room to move in now, but it would be nice if we could have an explicit carve out that if you're receiving government funds, then there's a higher expectation that you need to be able to allow inspections that are randomized and not only upon.
I'd agree, because once I think we give them those funds, we're legitimizing them, and if we're going to legitimize them, then we should have a right to back up our our funding. So yeah, I'd be interested in seeing a carve out. Councilman Miller, do you have something? Sorry, apologies.
I did, not on that.
Oh, okay, no, okay.
I wanted to go back a second and the privatizing of ticketing. I didn't say my piece on that. I 100% against that. As we talked about language that's broken fine, but I can see some exploitation in that would not be favorable to the citizens.
I know we get the question about red light camera ticketing a lot. Some states allow it, some states don't. I'll be perfectly honest, the libertarian streak in me absolutely hates it with every fiber of my being. So I don't know how far I can move that one along, but I am good with looking at the inspection stuff and some of the others and seeing if we have police language we can toy around with if we think we can change the age or something, so we can do some baseline language so we know what we're all talking about before we kick it or keep it. Anything either of you would like us, any of you sitting here would like us to take a look at, to yell at the state about, to make our lives better? If you don't have an answer today, that's perfectly fine. We've got couple weeks to put this stuff together, so.
I don't want to expand the focus too broad and make it too hard to keep up with the whole legislative agenda.
No, and that is one thing we try to pick and choose so we know. But it is a helpful tool when our lobbyist Whitney Dameron's up in the building and sometimes stuff pops up that falls within this and he doesn't have to run back to us like, where were you guys on that? I don't remember. He's like, nope, and he can show legislators this. So yes, there's a fine line between get what we need in there, but also we don't need a 20-page document. So we don't need that. All right, well, I think we have direction. Are we good? Anything else? Any other comments from staff or something we've missed? All right. I have no idea who's going to talk to us about biannual contractor licensing proposal. But I'm sure it's somebody. No, I think it may be. I bet it's Richard.
No, I was saying yes. See, 'cause I see Sylvia's online. Is there anything that you had a question about, Sylvia? Councilwoman Ortiz?
No, that's not Ortiz. I think that's.
Yeah, it is Councilwoman Ortiz.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. I didn't realize. I didn't see her on. I didn't
no,
see you on there.
I
Sorry,
just-
council member.
I just got logged in, so I kind of missed that conversation, but I'll go back and rewatch. But at this time, no. Thanks for asking.
Yep.
I want to thank you for your time. We have for you today a proposal to amend the licensing requirement in the Topeka Municipal Code. At the current time, we issue license once a year, and so the contractors have to come in once a year to get their license renewed. We're looking at moving to having them do it every 2 years. We've taken this proposal to the trade boards. We've talked to the contractors, all the stakeholders, to get their input, to see what they thought about it. At the current time, we are renewing licenses online. That's coming along very smoothly. We used to just do it by mail, and it was taking us 3 months to get all the contractors licensed and moving forward to the next year's license. And presently, we can issue a contractor's license that same day now with the online process that we have. By issuing them 2 years, our thought is we're going to break up the contractors into 2 groups, and we'll have them, and we'll have them, theoretically, if we break them up into 2 groups, we should be able to cut the time down in half of what we're doing right now. We had 75% of the contractors get their license online last year, and it took us a month from where we were at with 3 months. Now we're down to a month, and we're thinking that if we cut it in half, we can even get it down to 2 weeks. So we'll be more efficient and providing better service to the contractors when they come to get their license. We've been working to improve our licensing ever since I've been here. There's been a lot of issues with the contractors getting their license, a lot of frustration. Also, they're getting them at the same time, and it's causing backup with our software, so it can shut down. So we're trying to alleviate that. We've checked with the state statutes, looked at the state statutes to make sure that we'll be able to do this, and we won't violate those statutes. They just have to make sure they get their continuing education credits, and if they get them, they upload them, and we can issue their permits. We looked at other communities that have licensing and that we compare ourselves to, which is Olathe, Overland Park, Junction City, Shawnee, Lawrence, and Leavenworth, and Manhattan. And Manhattan is the only other community that has the 2-year licensing. Like I said, we took it to the trade boards. We also took it to the building board, fire appeals. The boards and also the contractors have recommended that we move forward with going to the governing body requesting that we amend our licensing regulations so that we'll issue our license every 2 years. Staff also supports the recommendation, and by amending the code, we can give the contractors more timely issuance of their license.
I might chime in really quickly to talk about a late attachment that I had sent in to Tanya, who helped me get this out, but this spreadsheet kind of breaks down what the revenue impact is to this. I know right now we've got a big focus on the budget, so I wanted to make sure that we talked about that. So the proposal would be, if approved by the governing body, to kick this off at the end of 2024, 2025 for this updated year. So you can see we've broke it down into the contractors with a qualifying party and then trade contractors with master. This was the best way to break these groups out into numbers that made them even, just to help for the workflow and to, try to keep the revenue somewhat the same. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see what the impacts are. So you'll see the first year, there's an increase because we're charging for a 2-year license for one of those pools of folks, and then the other one still pays for their 1 year. And then the second year, that goes back to just the other group paying for 2 years. So after the second year, so after 2026, it'll continue to shift from the 400,000 to the 353 into the future. Of course, these are based off of our current fees, but we're also looking at those right now too. So taking all those things into consideration. But as it stands today, this is what that would look like, and this would be the revenue impact. Happy to answer questions.
Questions come?
Yeah, just to clarify, because the way it looks on here, only certain contractors that do a certain thing are allowed a 2-year license.
Sorry, yeah, this spreadsheet's somewhat confusing. So they will all be 2-year licenses. We're staggering them into 2 groups.
Right. I just wanted to make
So
sure.
we're still renewing licenses every year as a part of our process, but we're just doing 50% of the people.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And the price increase, this is what it would be for if we went to the 2-year?
It'll be the same price. They'll just
Same
be
price.
paying, same price. Instead of instead of paying for 1 year, they're paying for a 2-year, but the price is the same for them. They'll just
Okay.
have to see us less often and go through that process less frequently.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank
I
you.
have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Councilmember Ortiz?
Thank you. I don't know if contractors lose their license, but what happens if we approve the 2-year and they lose it within a year or something? Or how will that affect them?
Well, what happens is they'll have to wait till that year is up, and then we'll pick them up right where they left off. If not, they'll have to pay the penalty for losing their license and pay the license year, if you follow what I'm saying.
Explain that to me again, I'm sorry.
So if I have a license and I lose my license in the middle of my term, I have to wait till the end of my term to come back, and then we'll pick you up where you left off.
Okay.
Or you can pay whatever, if there's a penalty or fine or whatever it is while you lost your license, you can pay that at that time. And we can renew your license at that time,
Okay, or not renew it.
or not renew it, correct?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any, like a database that says if somebody is not licensed?
Yes, well, if they're not on our list, then they're not. We look at the list. When contractors come in to do work, we look to see if they're licensed. And if they're not on our list, they're not holding a city license, we won't issue them a permit.
Well, we ran into that problem at a certain apartment complex, and they were not licensed plumber, so the work was shut down until they got a licensed plumber. So I was just wanting to figure out that there is a way to know if they're not licensed or not.
Yes.
So through the permitting process, we would know that. However, we know in this world, and we've been talking about this recently, that if a bad actor decides to start work without pulling a permit and notifying the city, then that sometimes we would not be aware of that, but we generally find out sooner than later, and then we address that.
I have no problems with 2 years. My own engineering license is on a 2-year renewal basis. I also have to do a bit more continuing ed than this requires, but it seems to have worked well for the state. And we actually go by, it's engineers, architects, surveyors, geologists, all the ones that have to be licensed. They go from an alphabetical standpoint. So like A to L is 1 year and the rest of the alphabet's the next year. So I don't have an issue with this. I think it makes it a lot easier on the staff, and being quicker is an advantage for us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miller?
So, thank you. So, what are some examples of how somebody could lose their license in the middle of their term? I mean, I'm sure there's numerous ways, but, just, some technicalities. She's talking about how they have some continuing education. Do they have to turn in certain things throughout that 2 years to where they would?
The only thing that, I haven't experienced that.
Right.
The only thing I could think of is they submitted faulty or false credentials when they got their license and we find out about it.
Okay.
That would be the only way I think that they would lose their license. I haven't had an experience where I've had to take someone's license.
Oh, okay.
So
that's okay. So it's a rare thing.
There is code that says you could if we got to that point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so there is laws on the books that say
Yes.
if someone violates something enough times, we can finally pull that, which is the whole reason we issue them in the first place, right?
Yes.
It's okay.
Okay.
But like I said,
Yeah, no, I got you.
Fortunate to not have to run into that situation often.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Had anything to add, Councilmember Banks?
No.
I like going to 2 years. In fact, I think any permit or license in this entire city that we can shift to 2 years would be great for a variety of reasons. I know years ago they did that at the state level with a few licenses, including the liquor, and it made everybody's life easier, especially for whoever holds the license or the businesses that have to get those licenses, especially when they're smaller or they're one-person operations. It's a lot less time on their hands to just do it every 2 years. And while I know nobody likes to hear this, and I don't always like to do it, I know this is also a good time when you make that transition to look at some of those fees. I know we haven't made a lot of adjustments to those fees in years, so I think as long as they're reasonable, since we're making this change, now's the time to do it. And I think what you'll find, because we found this, especially at the state level when changes were made, people are open to that. If it's only every 2 years and they have to pay a few extra dollars for that convenience, they're okay with that because they only have to do it every 2 years now. So the only thing I would say, and I don't know if it's an option, and I don't know that we do it at the local level, and I guess this would make things more confusing. I know some with 2-year licensees have gone to, you can pay, you have to fill out all the paperwork and get it approved, but you can still pay on a yearly basis. I'm not saying you have to commit to that. I don't know how complicated that is. Just something to look at. Because for some of the smaller businesses, they're happy to do it. They know they've got to pay it every 2 years. But if it's a $400 fee, it's still easier to pay you to at least have all the paperwork done. But no, the bill is due at the end of each year. So just something to think about. If it's not feasible, fine. But just put it in the back of your minds as you walk through the process of doing that. But yeah, I'm for it on as many of these as we can do to every 2 years. So. Yeah,
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, sounds good to me. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you for your time.
Yep. All right, before I wrap us up here, any council members want to say, add, talk about?
Nope. Thank you.
I do want to check, was there anyone here who wanted to say anything public comment-wise? I don't think so, but I always ask. All right, perfect. We will set up a meeting for both September and October. September will be to hopefully just review the legislative stuff so we can get it on an October agenda. October will be a little more to finally drill down in our ARPA issues. I also know there will probably be there might be a housing trust fund, maybe, cleanup bill coming your way in one of those months too, because we need to tweak that a little bit as we're trying to get the housing trust fund operational. We're running into a few oops, we need to correct that. So maybe a few cleanups like that, and then obviously anything else that comes before staff that they want to put in front of us. With that, anything else from anyone? Last chance. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.